"Sign this resignation letter or we terminate you immediately." Those were the exact words. After 21 years of dedicated service, I was given 30 minutes to decide. I chose resignation, but I wrote my own version. One carefully crafted sentence. 5 days later, their corporate attorney called at 7:43 a.m. voice tight with panic. "Miss Vaughn, we need to discuss the precise language in your resignation letter." Logan Pierce, the CFO, went completely silent when I explained what I actually meant. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. But let me take you back to the beginning. Let me explain exactly how I ended up in that conference room at 4:17 p.m. on a Friday afternoon in October 2025, watching 4 executives realize they just made a catastrophic error that would cost them everything they thought they'd gained. My name is Anna Vaughn and I'm 46 years old. For 21 years, I served as Senior Director of Global Operations at Ascent Systems, a software development company based in Denver, Colorado, specializing in enterprise resource planning solutions for manufacturing companies. I started in July 2004 as a junior operations analyst, fresh from graduate school with my MBA from Colorado State University, earning $42,000 annually and living in a studio apartment that cost more than half my monthly income. By October 2025, my annual compensation had reached $192,000 plus quarterly bonuses, comprehensive benefits, and stock options I'd accumulated over 2 decades. I managed a department of 41 professionals across 3 continents. My division generated $63 million in annual revenue. I wasn't just another employee with a fancy title. I was the living archive of institutional knowledge that kept Ascent Systems functioning. When our co forgot critical details about a major client relationship, my phone rang. When finance needed historical data from 2007 that existed nowhere in current systems, they contacted me. When board members wanted explanations for why certain processes existed, I provided those answers. My email archive stretched back 21 years. Meticulously organized, I maintained vendor relationships that predated most current staff members. I understood contract negotiations that happened before half our management team even graduated college. For 21 years, I was absolutely indispensable until suddenly I wasn't. The problems began 8 months before that October confrontation. In February 2025, Ascent Systems was acquired by Dominion Corporate Holdings, a massive conglomerate valued at $11.4 billion that specialized in purchasing medium-sized technology companies, systematically eliminating expensive, experienced employees and replacing them with recent graduates who accepted far lower compensation without questioning anything. I'd witnessed this exact pattern destroy 3 competing companies in our industry over the preceding 18 months. I knew precisely what was coming. The acquisition playbook never varied. New management arrives making reassuring promises about stability and continuity. Then they systematically eliminate anyone earning above $130,000 annually, replacing them with fresh graduates making $68,000 who lack the experience to recognize they're being exploited. The acquisition finalized on February 14, 2025, Valentine's Day. How appropriately ironic. The new management team arrived February 22. Our new CEO was Cameron Walsh. Wait, I need to correct that. Our new CEO was Cameron Foster, age 35, Yale MBA, previously an executive at a startup that burned through $40 million in venture capital before collapsing spectacularly. He possessed 0 practical experience in enterprise software operations. The CFO was Logan Pierce, 33 years old, formerly a senior consultant at Bain & Company, absolutely brilliant with financial modeling and Excel spreadsheets, but completely ignorant about how actual businesses operated on a daily operational level. The new SUA was Levi Coleman, 37, who'd been a vice president at Dominion Corporate for exactly 18 months and believed he understood everything about software companies because he'd once managed one for 8 months before it failed catastrophically. They scheduled a mandatory company-wide meeting for March 3 at 10 a.m. Cameron stood in our main conference room, a space I'd personally designed when we relocated to this building in 2013, selecting every piece of furniture, negotiating every equipment contract, Even choosing the specific shade of gray paint for the walls, and delivered the standard corporate acquisition speech I'd heard nearly word for word from 3 other companies. "We're incredibly excited about this partnership," he announced with rehearsed enthusiasm that fooled absolutely nobody with real corporate experience. "Nothing fundamental is going to change. We deeply value your contributions. Your positions are completely secure. Together, we'll achieve unprecedented success." Dominion acquired Ascent specifically because of the exceptional talent here, and we're committed to preserving that culture and expertise. I'd heard this identical speech before, delivered with the same false sincerity. When executives promise nothing will change, it means everything is about to change dramatically. I began updating my resume that very evening at 10:23 p.m., sitting at my dining room table with a glass of red wine. But I also started doing something else, something my father had taught me during his 32 years as a construction foreman fighting for workers' rights. I started documenting absolutely everything. Every email exchange, every process document, every contract clause, every vendor agreement, every client relationship detail, every policy, every procedure, every conversation that seemed remotely significant. I backed everything up to 3 separate encrypted external hard drives that I kept at home using military-grade encryption software. I'd learned this crucial lesson from watching other companies get acquired and gut their experienced staff. They terminate you, immediately lock you out of all systems, and suddenly you possess zero proof of anything you accomplished or any leverage to negotiate reasonable terms. The termination started in March, exactly 4 weeks after the acquisition closed. On March 24 at 8:47 a.m., they fired 15 people, all over 42 years old, all earning more than $115,000 annually, all with multiple decades of experience. They replaced them within 6 weeks with recent college graduates making less than half the salary. Human Resources called it organizational realignment. I called it systematic age discrimination and wage theft. But I kept my observations private and continued documenting every single termination, every replacement hire, every meeting where age or compensation was mentioned as a factor. I recorded everything. In April, they began targeting me specifically. Small things initially, excluding me from meetings I'd attended for years. On April 18th, there was a quarterly strategic planning session I'd facilitated for 9 consecutive years. Suddenly, my calendar invitation was cancelled. When I asked Cameron directly about this exclusion, he responded with casual dismissiveness. "Oh, we're bringing fresh perspectives to that process. We appreciate your past contributions, though." On April 29th, they reassigned 4 of my primary responsibilities to a 27-year-old manager named Grayson, who'd been with the company for exactly 9 months and possessed absolutely no understanding of our legacy systems or the complex vendor relationships I'd spent years cultivating. On May 15th, during a department-wide meeting with my entire team present, they openly questioned my decision-making abilities, implying I was out of touch with contemporary operational methodologies. Classic corporate intimidation tactics designed to make me quit voluntarily so they wouldn't have to pay proper severance. But I refused to quit. I continued showing up every day, performing my job flawlessly, documenting every slight, every exclusion, every undermining comment, every instance of disrespect. My personnel file was absolutely spotless. 21 years of outstanding performance evaluations, 0 disciplinary actions, multiple recognition awards, including Operations Excellence in 2017, Leadership Innovation in 2019, and Distinguished Service Award in 2022. They couldn't terminate me for cause, and they absolutely knew it. On June 27th, they attempted a different strategy. Logan called me into his office at 4:45 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Always a terrible sign. Friday afternoon meetings mean bad news. He said, "Anna, we're restructuring operations to align with Dominion's global framework. We're eliminating your current position and creating a new role called Senior Operations Coordinator. You're welcome to apply for it, but the compensation is significantly reduced. $94,000 annually. I'd been earning $192,000 plus substantial bonuses. This represented a $98,000 pay cut for essentially identical responsibilities with a slightly different title. It was textbook constructive dismissal disguised as corporate restructuring. I smiled pleasantly and responded, "I'll need some time to consider this." Then I went directly home and called Elizabeth Hartman, an employment attorney I'd retained in April when the warning signs became impossible to ignore. Elizabeth had 28 years of experience specializing in employment law with particular expertise in wrongful termination cases involving age discrimination. She'd represented over 180 employees in disputes with large corporations and maintained a success rate of 81%. She charged $450 per hour, and I'd already paid her $450 for 9 consultations. "They're attempting to force you out," Elizabeth said when I explained the situation. "That compensation reduction offer is textbook constructive dismissal. Don't accept it under any circumstances. Wait for them to make the next move and document absolutely everything." I waited for exactly 38 days. On August 4th at 3:15 p.m., I received the communication I'd been anticipating. Cameron's executive assistant sent an email. "Mr. Foster would like to meet with you in conference room C at 3:15 p.m. today. Please make yourself available immediately." Conference room C, not his office. That meant witnesses. That meant official business. That meant termination. I printed out my resignation letter, the one Elizabeth and I had drafted 4 weeks earlier after multiple revisions. Folded it carefully and placed it in my jacket pocket. Then I walked to conference room C. At exactly 3:15 p.m. Cameron, Logan, Levi, and Stephanie Lambert from Human Resources were already seated on one side of the long mahogany conference table like a panel of judges evaluating a defendant for leather portfolios arranged in front of them. 4 matching pens. 4 matching expressions of false sympathy. Cameron gestured toward the chair positioned across from them, the defendant's chair, isolated, facing the prosecution. I sat down calmly. I'd mentally rehearsed this exact moment at least 60 times. "Anna, thank you for making time to meet with us." Cameron began with forced friendliness. "We need to discuss your future with Ascent Systems." Translation: "We're terminating you. As you're aware, we've been restructuring to align with Dominion's operational framework. We've made some difficult decisions about our leadership structure moving forward. After extensive consideration, we've decided to move in a different direction with the operations role." Translation: "You're fired and we're hiring someone younger and cheaper." I said nothing. Just waited. Elizabeth had coached me extensively. Let them talk. Let them make their threats. Observe everything. Stay completely calm. Logan jumped in, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "This is obviously a difficult situation, Anna. We recognize your years of service, but we believe it's best for everyone, including you, to pursue new opportunities elsewhere. We're prepared to offer you 2 options." He slid a manila folder across the polished table. Inside were 2 documents, both already prepared, just waiting for my signature. "Option 1, Logan continued, you resign effective immediately. We'll provide 3 weeks of severance compensation. That's $11,077 plus your acred vacation time. Will provide a neutral reference. Clean break, minimal complications. You leave with dignity intact. 3 weeks of severance after 21 years. That was deliberately insulting. Colorado law didn't require any severance at all, and they knew it perfectly well. They were counting on me being too frightened or too exhausted to fight. Option 2, Levi added with barely concealed smugness. We terminate you for restructuring purposes. You receive nothing. No severance payment, no vacation payout, nothing. And we note in your employment file that your position was eliminated due to redundancy, which doesn't create the most favorable impression for future employment opportunities. That was a threat, a clumsy, obvious threat, but a threat nonetheless. They were telling me, take the pittance or we'll make it harder for you to find work elsewhere. I opened the folder. Inside was a pre-written resignation letter on company letterhead. All I needed to do was sign at the bottom. The letter read, I, Anna Vaughn, hereby resign from my position as Senior Director of Global Operations at Ascent Systems effective immediately. I understand that I will receive 3 weeks of severance compensation and accrued vacation time as my final settlement. I release Ascent Systems and Dominion Corporate Holdings from any and all claims related to my employment or termination thereof. It was a trap. If I signed that document, I'd be waiving all my rights to pursue legal action for age discrimination, constructive dismissal, or wrongful termination for $11,077. I looked at all four of them. Young, confident, absolutely certain they'd backed me into a corner with no possible escape. Cameron checking his smartwatch. Probably had dinner plans at 6 p.m. Logan smirking slightly, clearly enjoying his perceived power. Levi leaning back in his chair like this meeting was already concluded and he'd won decisively. I thought about my father who'd spent 32 years as a construction foreman fighting for workers' rights, often against impossible odds. He taught me one critical lesson when I was 15 years old and got my first job at a retail store. Never sign anything without reading it 3 times. And never let people in expensive suits bully you just because they have fancy titles. You have rights, know them, use them. I'll resign, I said calmly. Relief flooded their faces immediately. Cameron actually smiled broadly. Excellent decision, Anna. Very professional of you. If you could just sign right here. I'll write my own resignation letter. I interrupted. The smiles faltered slightly. Well, we've prepared one that covers all the necessary legal. I'll write my own, I repeated firmly. Unless you're planning to dictate what specific words I'm allowed to use in my personal resignation letter. Cameron hesitated. He couldn't force me to use their letter without admitting this entire process was coerced. Fine, write your own. We need it by end of business today. 5 p.m. You'll have it within 1 hour, I said, standing up. I walked out of conference room C at 3:37 p.m., leaving them sitting there with their pre-written documents and their matching pens and their false victory. I went back to my office, closed the door, locked it, and opened my laptop. I'd actually already written my resignation letter 4 weeks earlier during a sleepless night when I knew this confrontation was inevitable. I drafted it with Elizabeth's expert help. We'd spent 6 hours on a video call going through every single word, every comma, every potential legal implication. The letter was 1 sentence, 42 words. I read it for probably the 75th time, then sent it to Elizabeth via encrypted message. They just delivered the ultimatum. Resign or be terminated. Is this still our strategy? She replied in under 2 minutes. Perfect timing. Send it exactly as written. Don't add anything. Don't explain anything. Just that 1 sentence. Then wait. I printed it on Ascent Systems letterhead. I signed it with my full legal name in blue ink. I made 4 copies. 1 for human resources, 1 for my personal records, 1 for Elizabeth, 1 for my safety deposit box. Then I walked back to conference room C at 4:17 p.m., exactly 40 minutes after I'd left. Cameron, Logan, Levi, and Stephanie were still there now with coffee cups in front of them, probably celebrating their perceived victory prematurely. I handed Cameron the letter without speaking a word. He skimmed it quickly, barely reading. Fine. This is acceptable. HR will process your final compensation and I'll need all the severance details in writing, I interrupted, including exact amounts, payment timeline, and specific confirmation of what's included. Logan rolled his eyes in that condescending way young executives do when dealing with people they consider beneath them. 3 weeks' salary, we already told you, $11,077. It'll be in your final paycheck. And my acred vacation time, I have 142.5 hours is fine. That's included. And my outstanding expense reimbursements. I submitted receipts for $4,287 from the client meeting in Boston last month that hasn't been processed yet. We'll include everything, Levi said dismissively, already standing up to leave. You can go now. HR will contact you about returning your laptop and access credentials. I left, walked out of that conference room at 4:24 p.m. on August 4, 2025. Went to my office, packed my personal items into 3 cardboard boxes, photographs of my family, my coffee mug from a conference in 2016, a desk plant my team had given me for my 20th anniversary, my favorite fountain pen that had been a gift from a mentor. My phone was already buzzing with text messages from my team asking what happened, But I didn't respond to anyone. Elizabeth had been absolutely clear. Radio silence until they figure it out. Don't explain. Don't clarify. Don't respond to anyone. I drove home at 5:04 p.m., set the boxes in my living room, poured a glass of wine and waited. They figured it out 5 days later. Tuesday, August 9th, 7:43 a.m. My phone rang. Unknown number with a Denver area code. I answered on the fourth ring. Anna Vaughn speaking. Miss Vaughn, this is Jonathan Winters, General Counsel for Dominion Corporate Holdings. I need to discuss your resignation letter with you immediately. Are you available to talk? I sat down my coffee and smiled. Here we go. Of course, Mr. Winters. How can I help you? There's some confusion about the language you used in your resignation. Specifically, the phrase effective upon receipt of complete settlement of all compensation, benefits, stock options, and other amounts owed under my employment agreement and applicable law. Can you clarify what you meant by that? I opened my laptop to the detailed spreadsheet I'd prepared with Elizabeth. 63 tabs, color-coded with supporting documentation for every single line item. Certainly, Mr. Winters, it's quite straightforward. My resignation becomes effective when I receive complete settlement of all amounts owed to me under my employment agreement and applicable Colorado law. Until that settlement is received in full, my resignation hasn't taken effect, which means I remain an employee of Ascent Systems with all rights, benefits, and protections thereof. Silence. Very long silence. I could hear papers rustling, someone whispering urgently in the background. I'm sorry, Jonathan finally said. His voice noticeably tighter. Can you repeat that? My resignation is conditional, Mr. Winters. It's effective upon, meaning contingent upon, receipt of complete settlement. That's basic contract law. An event is effective upon another event when the first event doesn't occur until the second event is completed. My resignation doesn't become effective until you pay me everything you legally owe me under my employment contract in Colorado state law. More silence, more rustling then. And what exactly do you believe we owe you? I'm glad you asked. Let me provide a detailed breakdown. I pulled up my spreadsheet. 63 tabs. Thousands of hours of meticulous documentation. First, my base salary through the date of resignation. $14,76923. Second, acred vacation time of 142.5 hours at my hourly rate of $92.31. That's $13,154.18. Third, outstanding expense reimbursements. $4,287. Those three items total $32,21041. However, that's just the beginning. What do you mean the beginning? His voice had gone up slightly. Fourth, my annual performance bonus for 2025. Section 6.2 of my employment agreement signed March 7, 2018 guarantees an annual performance bonus of 80% of base salary for meeting operational targets. I didn't just meet all targets, I exceeded them by substantial margins. Our operations generated $63 million in revenue this year, 14% above projections. The bonus is payable upon termination of employment for any reason. That's $153,600. I heard something drop on his end, maybe a pen, maybe his coffee cup, maybe his jaw. Hold on, we need to review. Fifth, I continued calmly. My stock options. I have 52,000 stock options granted in my 2020 compensation package that vest immediately upon change of control. Dominion's acquisition of Ascent triggered the change of control provision at current market value of $22.18 per share. Those options are worth $1,153,360. The silence now was absolutely profound. I could picture Jonathan frantically calculating numbers. His face getting progressively redder with each digit. Sixth, my severance package. Section 8.4 of my employment agreement, which I can email you right now if you'd like, states that if my employment is terminated without cause or I resign for good reason within 24 months of a change of control, I'm entitled to 20 months of salary continuation plus benefits continuation. That's $320,000 in salary plus approximately $31,500 in health insurance premiums and other benefits. You're saying we owe you over $1.6 million. His voice had gone up a full octave. 67041 to be exact, plus interest acre-wing at the statutory rate of 8% annually per Colorado Revised Statute Section 13-21-101 calculated from August 4th. And since my resignation hasn't become effective yet, I'm still technically employed, which means I'm still acre-wing salary at my daily rate of $73,846, still covered by company health insurance, still entitled to all benefits and protections of employment, including my office, my email access, my corporate credit card, my parking space, and my participation in the 401k matching program. This is absurd. Can't. Actually, Mr. Winters. Can and I did. I consulted with Elizabeth Hartman at Hartman Employment Law. Perhaps you've heard of her. She's argued 4 cases before the Colorado Supreme Court on employment contract interpretation, winning all 4. She's reviewed my resignation letter extensively and assures me it's ironclad. Conditional resignations are perfectly legal in Colorado and have been upheld repeatedly in case law. You forced me to choose between resigning or being terminated. I chose resignation, but I made it conditional upon receiving what I'm legally owed. You accepted my resignation without reading it carefully. That's your mistake, not mine. We'll fight this in court. You absolutely should, I said pleasantly. Absolutely take it to court. Hire expensive lawyers. Spend 6 figures on litigation because I have 21 years of documentation showing systematic age discrimination, constructive dismissal, and wrongful termination. I have emails from Cameron Foster dated May 8th, explicitly discussing getting rid of expensive older employees to improve our cost structure. I have recordings legally obtained under Colorado's one-party consent law of meetings where Logan Pierce discussed replacing me with fresh young talent who won't question our decisions. I have Levi Coleman's text messages from June 22 calling me a relic who can't adapt to modern business practices. All admissible, all time-stamped, all backed up in multiple secure locations. The silence now was the sound of a lawyer realizing his clients had just handed an employee a winning lottery ticket. Or I continued calmly, you can pay me what you legally owe me under my employment contract. I'll sign a proper release with mutual non-disparagement clauses and we all move on with our lives. Your choice, Mr. Winters. But I should mention that every day you delay, my statutory interest accrue. And every day I remain technically employed, I continue earning my daily salary. The meter's running. He hung up without saying goodbye. I poured myself another cup of coffee and waited. 3 hours and 42 minutes later my phone rang again. Logan Pierce. He was absolutely not calm. What the hell did you do? He screamed before I could even say hello. I resigned as you requested. You tricked us. You deliberately wrote that resignation too. I wrote a legally valid resignation letter, Logan. You accepted it without reading it carefully. You had 4 people in that room, including someone from Human Resources, and none of you apparently noticed that I'd made my resignation conditional. How is that my fault? The board is furious. Cameron is getting calls from Dominion headquarters. Our CEO in New York wants to know why we're suddenly on the hook for $1.60 $6 million to a terminated employee. I haven't been terminated, Logan. That's precisely the point. I'm still employed because my resignation hasn't become effective yet. We're not paying you a single penny of that bonus or those stock options. Then don't pay me, I said pleasantly. Keep me employed. Continue my salary at $14,76923 per pay period. Keep me on the health insurance at $2,625 per month. Let me keep acre-wing 401k matching contributions. Oh, and I'll need my office access restored since I'm still technically an employee and my email and my corporate credit card. And actually, since I'm still employed and you've given my responsibilities to other people, I'm essentially being paid to do nothing, which I'm completely fine with. I can wait as long as you want. He was sputtering now, literally unable to form coherent words. This is will sue you for what, Logan? Writing a resignation letter, using conditional language in a legal document, knowing my rights under my employment contract. Good luck with that lawsuit. But while you're considering litigation, you should know that I've already filed a charge with the EOC for age discrimination. I have documentation of 23 employees over age 40 being terminated and replaced with younger workers making significantly less money. I have emails and recordings proving discriminatory intent. That investigation will take months, possibly years. And the longer you drag this out, the more documentation I accumulate and the bigger the damages become. He hung up on me. 28 minutes later, my work email reactivated. Someone in it had panicked and restored my access. Probably because a lawyer told them I was technically still employed and they could face additional legal problems for locking me out. I logged in and found an email chain between Cameron, Logan, Levi, Jonathan Winters, and 4 other Dominion corporate attorneys. The subject line: urgent VA resignation issue legal exposure. They'd forwarded my resignation letter to 6 different employment law firms. All 6 had confirmed conditional resignation, legally valid, enforceable, extremely expensive mistake. One lawyer's response was particularly satisfying. You accepted a conditional resignation without recognizing it was conditional. She's correct about everything: the bonus, the options, the severance. You're on the hook for the full amount unless you want to litigate and risk even bigger damages for age discrimination and wrongful termination. My strong recommendation is immediate settlement. Jonathan Winters called me again at 6:18 p.m. Ms. Fawn Dominion would like to discuss a settlement to resolve this matter quickly and amicably. I'm listening. We're prepared to offer you $950,000 as full and final settlement of all claims. That includes everything: salary, vacation, expenses, bonus, options, severance. Take it or leave it. I'll leave it. Thanks. Anyway, as I explained, you owe me $1,690,67041 minimum under my contract. If you don't pay, I remain employed indefinitely and file suit. Discovery will be fascinating. I have 21 years of internal records. Miss Fawn, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, Mr. Winters. I'm asking for exactly what my contract entitles me to. Nothing more, nothing less. You're the ones who tried to force me out with 3-week severance after 21 years. That wasn't reasonable. $1.2 million final offer. But you have to decide right now. $1,690,67041 plus attorney's fees of $63,450. Elizabeth has been very busy on my behalf and I need it within 20 business days via wire transfer. And I want a signed letter of recommendation from Cameron Foster on company letterhead stating I was an exemplary employee who contributed significantly to Ascent's success, and you'll agree to a mutual non-disparagement clause. Mr. Foster won't. Then I remain employed and file suit tomorrow morning. Your choice, Mr. Winters. But I should mention that every day you delay costs you an additional $73,846 in my daily salary plus benefits plus acre-wing interest. And once I file suit, that settlement number is going to include emotional distress damages, punitive damages for age discrimination, and attorney's fees that will be substantially higher. The price goes up the longer you wait. He called me back at 8:47 p.m. Deal. We'll wire the funds within 20 business days. You'll receive the letter of recommendation by Friday. Our lawyers will send the settlement agreement for your review by tomorrow afternoon. On September 3, 2025 at 1:18 p.m., I received a wire transfer for $1,754,12041. The full settlement plus attorney's fees. Same day, FedEx delivered a signed letter of recommendation on Dominion Corporate Holdings letterhead with Cameron Foster's signature at the bottom, praising my 21 years of exemplary service, operational excellence, and invaluable contributions to Ascent Systems' success. I seriously doubt he wrote a single word of it himself. Elizabeth reviewed the settlement agreement, all 52 pages of it, standard release language, mutual non-disparagement clauses, confidentiality provisions regarding settlement terms. I signed it on September 6. My resignation officially became effective on September 6, 2025 at 3:22 p.m. I was no longer an employee of Ascent Systems. I'd successfully negotiated a $1.75 million severance package from a company that tried to force me out with $11,077. The epilogue is deeply satisfying. Cameron Foster lasted exactly 7 more months at Ascent before being fired in April 2026 for missing quarterly targets by 31%. Turns out that firing all your experienced employees and replacing them with people who don't know how anything works doesn't actually improve operations. Who could have predicted that? Logan Pierce quit in March 2026, citing irreconcilable differences with corporate leadership in his resignation letter. The irony wasn't lost on me. Levi Coleman is still there as of this writing, managing a company that's hemorrhaging clients because nobody remembers how to maintain the legacy systems or who the critical vendor contacts are or why certain processes exist in the first place. 4 of my former team members have contacted me for advice after receiving similar ultimatums. I've connected all of them with Elizabeth. 3 have successfully negotiated 6-figure settlements. The 4th is still employed while the company calculates how expensive it will be to actually pay her what they contractually owe. As for me, I'm semi-retired at 46. I do occasional consulting work for medium-sized companies, charging $575 per hour, helping them with operational optimization and process improvement. But my specialty has become career defense planning, helping experienced employees document everything, understand their contracts, and protect themselves when management tries to force them out. I've been contacted by 19 different people in the past year, all facing similar situations, all being systematically pushed out by companies that view experienced employees as expensive liabilities rather than valuable assets. I teach them what my father taught me. Know your rights. Document everything. Never let people in suits bully you just because they have fancy titles. The lesson here isn't about being vindictive or greedy. It's about understanding that when you work somewhere for 21 years, when you build systems and relationships and institutional knowledge, you have value that can't be easily replaced. And when a company tries to discard that value for pennies on